The unexpected war. The stars were silent as the great ships of the Galactic Empire drifted through space, heading toward a tiny blue planet. Earth, a name that once echoed only in ancient tales and forgotten histories, was now marked for destruction. To the vast and mighty Galactic Empire, Earth was nothing more than a speck in the galaxy, a primitive world, unworthy of notice, or so they thought. For centuries, Earth had been ignored. It was seen as a simple backwater planet, full of nothing but scattered nations and old, outdated technology. The Galactic Empire, with its advanced fleets and hyper-advanced weapons, had never once considered Earth a threat. That was, until now. In the grand halls of the Galactic Council, the decision had been made. Earth would be destroyed. The Empire's leaders had grown tired of hearing whispers about humanity's past, tales of ancient warriors who fought with unimaginable strength. They believed it was time to silence Earth once and for all. The ships gathered in the void of space, their enormous engines ready to break the silence. It was an invasion on a scale that Earth had never experienced. The ships were equipped with the most powerful weapons in the galaxy, designed to wipe out entire cities in a single blow. The Empire had no doubt that their forces would crush whatever defense the humans could muster. But as the fleet moved closer to Earth, something strange began to happen. Back on Earth, humans had been living their lives, unaware of the impending doom. People went about their daily routines, oblivious to the great threat that was looming above them. It was just another day on Earth, or so they thought. At the highest levels of government, however, there was a growing sense of unease. There had been strange reports from military installations across the planet, unexplained energy readings and communications that made no sense. Something was stirring beneath the surface of Earth, something long forgotten. It was a warning, but no one understood it. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, hidden away in long-forgotten bunkers and secret bases, a long-dormant power was slowly awakening. For centuries, the humans had kept a secret from the rest of the galaxy, a secret so powerful that no one could ever imagine it. The secret was an ancient fleet of warships, powerful beyond belief, waiting for the day when Earth would be threatened. That day had now come. The first signs of danger came as mysterious signals began to flood Earth's communications networks. A strange transmission echoed through military channels, a message in an old language that no one could immediately understand. But one thing was clear: it was a warning, and it was meant for the Galactic Empire. The human leaders were unsure of what to make of it at first. Was it a mistake? A false alarm? But as the signals grew stronger and more frequent, it became undeniable. Something was out there, and it was heading straight for Earth. On the night when the Galactic fleet arrived in orbit, Earth's leaders gathered in a secure bunker beneath the surface. The planet's top military minds were there, trying to make sense of the situation. A senior officer, General Marcus Hale, looked at the holographic display before him, showing the incoming ships. "We've been monitoring their movements for hours," the general said, his voice filled with disbelief. "They're coming for us, and they won't stop until they've destroyed everything." The room fell silent. No one knew what to do. How could they? Earth had no defense capable of withstanding an assault from the Galactic Empire. No weapons, no fleet, just a handful of desperate men and women who had no idea how to fight an army that controlled the galaxy. And then, as if on cue, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. "Wait," General Hale said, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the sensors. "Something's happening." The hum of machinery echoed in the underground bunker, and a loud clanking sound reverberated through the halls. The lights flickered, and then suddenly, the room was bathed in a brilliant blue light. The ancient warships, once buried deep beneath the Earth, were awakening. Their systems, dormant for centuries, began to come to life. Massive, powerful engines roared to life, shaking the very Earth as they prepared for launch. The humans had been holding on to a secret all this time. A fleet of ships built long ago, designed to protect Earth from any threat, was now ready to fight. These ships weren't like anything the Galactic Empire had ever seen. The humans, with their primitive technology, had built something far more advanced than the galaxy's greatest minds had ever imagined. As the fleet rose from the ground, the Empire's ships above Earth began to move into attack position. But what the invaders didn't know was that they were about to face something they had never even dreamed of. General Hale stood at the command center, watching as the ancient ships emerged from their underground tombs. The enemy fleet above Earth was vast, but it was about to face a force unlike anything it had ever seen. "They've made a grave mistake," Hale said quietly. "They thought Earth was weak. Now, they'll learn what happens when you mess with humanity." The Galactic fleet began to open fire, launching devastating energy blasts toward Earth's surface. The first few strikes hit the planet's atmosphere with terrifying force, sending shockwaves across the land. But what they didn't expect was that Earth wasn't defenseless anymore. One by one, the ancient warships fired back, sending beams of energy that obliterated the invaders' forces. The battle had begun, and Earth wasn't going down without a fight. As the Galactic Empire's ships were torn apart by the human fleet's superior firepower, the invaders began to realize the terrible truth. They had underestimated humanity. It wasn't just the ships that the Empire had to fear. Earth's people, the same people they had laughed at and dismissed for centuries, were now fighting back with a fury that shook the galaxy to its core. And the Galactic Empire had no idea what was coming next. The battle unleashed. The once silent skies of Earth now erupted with chaos. The hum of the ancient ships echoed through the atmosphere, their sleek and powerful forms cutting through the air with precision. The Galactic Empire's fleet, expecting an easy victory, was now faced with an overwhelming force they never saw coming. Up above, the Empire's flagship, a colossal vessel equipped with weapons capable of wiping out entire cities, stood proudly in orbit, commanding its legions. The commander aboard the flagship, Admiral Corrin, had spent years conquering star systems, never once doubting his fleet's invincibility. But as he watched Earth's ancient warships rise from the ground, a cold chill ran down his spine. "What is this?" Admiral Corrin muttered, his voice trembling as he scanned the readings on his control panel. Those ships weren't supposed to exist. They shouldn't be able to do this. Beneath the surface of Earth, General Hale's face was stoic. He stared at the holographic map displaying both the human fleet's movements and the incoming attacks from the Empire's forces. The time for hiding was over. Humanity's fight for survival had begun. "All units, prepare for battle," General Hale ordered, his voice calm but resolute. "Let's show them what we're capable of." The massive fleet of human warships, each one designed with technology older than the Empire itself, now came to life. The engines roared as they ascended, powerful enough to challenge the Empire's might. They weren't the most advanced ships, not by a long shot, but they were more than a match for the invaders. What the Galactic Empire didn't realize was that Earth's greatest strength was never in its ships or weapons, but in its people. The first few seconds of battle were chaos. Massive energy beams erupted from the human fleet, clashing against the Empire's advanced weaponry. The very air around them seemed to crackle with power as ships collided, their shields flashing with every impact. The Empire's forces fired relentlessly, attempting to break through the human defenses, but Earth's warships were unlike anything they had ever faced. One of the Empire's most powerful destroyers, the Zephyrus, targeted a human ship, firing a concentrated energy beam directly at it. The beam hit, exploding on contact. The crew aboard the destroyer cheered, believing they had destroyed another weak human ship. But as the smoke cleared, the human vessel emerged, damaged but still functional. The ship's hull had absorbed the blast, and it retaliated with a barrage of missiles that ripped through the Empire's destroyer. The crew of the Zephyrus stared in disbelief as their ship was torn apart. It was an unexpected blow. An enemy they thought was easy to crush had just struck back with a force they couldn't comprehend. Back on Earth, the people watched in awe. News stations broadcasted live footage of the battle as Earth's fleet fought back. Thousands of civilians, once unaware of the threat, now watched their world's fate unfold before their eyes. The Empire's initial attack had not only failed, but humanity's response was swift and unyielding. The idea that Earth could be a victim of a galactic war seemed more distant with each passing minute. Humanity was fighting back, and they were winning. The battle continued for hours. The Empire's ships, which had once believed Earth was beneath them, began to fall one by one. Their sleek, advanced designs were no match for the older, rugged human warships that fought with unmatched ferocity. The human fleet didn't fight like the Empire did. They fought with everything they had, with a strength born from generations of struggle. General Hale stood at the command center, watching as his fleet pushed forward. The battle had only begun, but already the tide was shifting. The Empire had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now they were paying the price. He couldn't help but think of the Empire's arrogance. For years, they had dismissed humanity as nothing more than a speck in the vastness of space. Now they were learning the hard way that humanity was not to be underestimated. All units pressed the attack. Hale commanded, his voice full of authority. "We're not just defending Earth. We're sending a message. This planet is not theirs to conquer." The human fleet surged forward, their weapons firing in perfect unison. Every shot, every maneuver was calculated with precision. The Empire's ships, now struggling to hold their ground, began to retreat. The sight of their powerful forces being overwhelmed by Earth's determined fleet was something they had never imagined. Back aboard the Zephyrus, Admiral Corrin stood silently, watching as his fleet lost ship after ship. The realization began to sink in. Earth was not the weak target they had assumed. The humans were strong, stronger than they had ever known. "We need reinforcements," Corrin ordered urgently, but it was too late. The reinforcements he had called for were still light years away, and Earth's fleet was closing in, destroying anything that got in their way. The battle had only just begun, but Earth's message was clear. The Galactic Empire had picked the wrong enemy. And now, humanity would fight with everything they had. In the distance, the first of the Empire's massive warships began to crumble. One after another, the invaders fell to the might of Earth's ancient fleet. There was no turning back now. The war was on, and humanity was ready for it. Humanity's wrath unleashed. The battle in space raged on, a chaotic storm of energy blasts and explosions. As the human fleet continued to engage the Galactic Empire's invaders, the tide was shifting with every passing moment. The Empire had not anticipated the sheer ferocity of Earth's forces. They thought their advanced technology would crush humanity's outdated warships, but instead, they were learning a harsh lesson. Humanity would never be easily conquered. Admiral Corrin watched helplessly from the bridge of his flagship as his fleet began to crumble. His officers, once confident in their superiority, now stared at the destruction with disbelief. Earth's ships, though older and slower, fought with an unmatched tenacity that caught the Empire off guard. The human vessels didn't rely on technology alone. They relied on their crew, on their courage, on their will to survive. "Retreat," Corrin finally barked, realizing that victory was no longer within reach. The Empire had underestimated Earth's resolve, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. But even as his ships began to pull back, he knew this was not over. Earth's fleet had just begun to show its strength, and the Empire had no idea what was coming next. Back on Earth, General Hale paced in the command center, his eyes fixed on the live battle feeds. Every explosion, every ship that fell, was a testament to humanity's ability to fight back. But Hale knew this was just the beginning. The Empire had underestimated them, but now the true test was about to begin. "Is everything in place?" Hale asked, turning to his second-in-command, Commander Torres. Torres nodded. "Yes, sir. The final phase is ready. We've been preparing for this for years." Hale's face hardened. Then it's time to make the next move. Let's show them why they shouldn't have messed with Earth. Outside, the skies above Earth were filled with a spectacle of destruction. The Empire's ships, now retreating, were battered and broken. Human vessels, battered but determined, pursued relentlessly, chasing down every fleeing ship. The sound of the battle was deafening, but amid the chaos, a sense of purpose flowed through the human fleet. They weren't just fighting to defend their planet. They were fighting for their future, for their very existence. Commander Torres gave the signal, and a sudden shift in the battle occurred. A large portion of the human fleet turned away from the Empire's remaining ships and moved toward a massive uncharted area in space, a hidden fleet that had been awaiting activation for years. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The ships within the hidden fleet were far more advanced than anything the Galactic Empire had seen. These were Earth's trump cards, hidden deep within the planet's core, waiting for the moment when humanity would be forced to fight. Now, that moment had arrived. As the hidden fleet began to rise from Earth's atmosphere, the shockwaves rippled through the Empire's forces. Corrin's eyes widened in disbelief. What is this? Where did they get these ships? It was clear that Earth's fleet was not what it seemed. The ships that had initially appeared outdated and vulnerable were now revealed to be part of a much greater arsenal, one that the Empire could never have imagined. The massive warships, sleek and menacing, were equipped with weapons that could obliterate entire fleets in seconds. The surprise factor was devastating. With this new force joining the battle, the Empire's forces began to fall into disarray. What had started as a retreat now turned into a full-on rout. The newly activated fleet cut through the remaining Empire ships like a hot knife through butter. No matter how advanced the Empire's technology was, it couldn't match the combined might of Earth's forces. On the ground, the people of Earth watched as the battle unfolded above them. News outlets broadcasted the live feeds, showing humanity's defiance in the face of certain destruction. They had been preparing for a fight, but no one could have imagined just how powerful they had become. From every corner of the world, people cheered, knowing that Earth's survival depended on this moment. General Hale stood in the command center, watching as the Empire's forces crumbled. He knew this was just one battle, one step in a long war, but it was a victory, and victory meant more than just a tactical advantage. It meant that humanity had shown the universe that Earth was not to be underestimated. "Keep pushing," Hale ordered. "We will not stop until every last one of them is driven from our skies." The battle continued, the Empire's ships now fighting a losing battle. As the human fleet advanced, more of the invaders fell. The Galactic Empire had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they would pay the price. Earth's wrath had been unleashed, and the Empire had no idea what it was up against. On the bridge of the Zephyrus, Admiral Corrin's hand tightened around the railing. His once proud fleet was in tatters. "We need to regroup, or we'll lose everything," he muttered, fear creeping into his voice. But it was too late. The tide of the war had turned, and humanity was not about to let it slip away. The Galactic Empire's grip on the galaxy was slipping, and Earth was showing them that war with humanity was not a battle anyone could win. The Empire's realization. The vastness of space had never seemed so small to Admiral Corrin. His once immense fleet, a symbol of the Galactic Empire's unquestionable power, was now a shadow of its former self. His flagship, the Valiant Star, rocked violently as another of Earth's newly activated warships tore through the enemy ranks. He stared at the chaos on his screens, the once proud Empire's forces being scattered like dust in the wind. He couldn't comprehend what was happening. This was supposed to be a quick, decisive invasion, and yet here they were, retreating from a planet they'd underestimated. "Admiral," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Captain Vera, his tactical officer. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The remaining fleet is in complete disarray. The humans, they're relentless. They won't stop." Corrin turned to her, his face hardening with frustration. "I can see that, Captain. But what I don't understand is how they could have had such power hidden away. His voice was low, barely above a whisper. We've scouted Earth for years. We knew their technology was behind ours. Yet somehow they've pulled this out of nowhere. Vyra hesitated, then looked at the screen where Earth's newly revealed fleet was advancing. Their weapons were devastating, powerful enough to tear through their defenses with ease. Perhaps we miscalculated, Admiral. We believed their ships were outdated and slow. But they've kept something hidden. Corrin clenched his fists, glaring at the screens. Yes, something we could never have predicted. He let out a bitter laugh, a mixture of anger and disbelief. These humans, they always have a way of surprising us. Meanwhile, on Earth, the battle raged on in full force. Humanity's newly awakened fleet tore through the Galactic Empire's forces with cold precision, each blow landing with devastating accuracy. General Hale, standing in the command center back on Earth, watched as the enemy fleet fractured under the pressure. His face was grim, but there was a sense of satisfaction in his eyes. This was only the beginning, he knew. This victory was the first step in a long and grueling war, but it was a crucial one. Prepare the next wave, Hale ordered, his voice steady. We're not done yet. We need to make sure they understand that Earth will never back down. Commander Torres nodded, tapping a few commands into the console. Yes, sir. The secondary fleet is ready for deployment. We got additional units ready to mobilize. Hale turned, his gaze sweeping over the maps and screens. The tide of battle was turning in their favor, but Hale knew that the Galactic Empire wasn't one to retreat without a fight. The last thing they needed was for the Empire to regroup and return with full force. He needed to strike while the iron was hot. Back in the space battle, the Galactic Empire's once proud fleet was crumbling, but Corrin wasn't ready to give up. He had faced challenges before, and he knew that defeat was never a certainty until the last ship fell. As he observed the screens, his mind raced with options. The humans had shown their strength, but he had a plan to counter their advances. They might have hidden their fleet, but the Empire still had the advantage in numbers. He wasn't about to let Earth's forces take the upper hand. Captain, Corrin said, his voice cold with resolve, we can't afford to lose this battle. Prepare for a full counterattack. We will regroup and hit them with everything we've got. Vyra looked hesitant. But Admiral, their technology, their new ships. I don't care about their ships. Corrin snapped. We'll use everything we have to crush them. The humans are strong, but they are not invincible. They've underestimated us. They think they've won, but they're about to learn the hard way that the Galactic Empire doesn't lose. His words were filled with fury, but beneath it, there was fear. Fear of what Earth had become, of what they were capable of. Corrin had seen many civilizations rise and fall, but the humans were different. There was something about them that made them far more dangerous than he had anticipated. On Earth, as the final stages of the battle continued to unfold, the human fleet pushed forward, relentlessly driving the Empire back. With every ship that fell, with every enemy vessel that exploded in a brilliant flash, Earth's confidence grew. People around the world were watching, witnessing their planet's greatest stand against an intergalactic power. It was more than just a war. It was a statement. The message was clear. Earth would not bow to anyone. Admiral Corrin's flagship, the Valiant Star, was battered, its once pristine exterior now marred by the scars of battle. Yet, Corrin refused to give up. He would not let the Empire fall. Not like this. Not to a bunch of primitive humans who had no idea what they were up against. As the Galactic Empire's retreat began in earnest, Corrin's heart sank. He could feel it, the crushing weight of defeat. The humans had proven something he never thought possible. They were more than just survivors. They were warriors, and he feared that they were only getting started. Back on Earth, General Hale stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the monitors as the battle slowly but surely turned in their favor. His jaw tightened. They won't be back for long, he murmured. But when they do, we'll be ready. The battle was far from over, but humanity had sent a clear message to the Galactic Empire. Earth would never surrender. And as the last of the Empire's ships retreated into the distance, one thing was certain: this was just the beginning. The final showdown. The vast expanse of space was quiet, an eerie stillness hanging over the battlefield. The Galactic Empire's once mighty fleet had retreated, leaving Earth's ships to drift triumphantly in the black void. The shattered remnants of enemy warships floated like wreckage, their dark silhouettes lit up by the dying light of distant stars. For a moment, it seemed like victory had been achieved, but General Hale knew this peace was fleeting. The Empire would return, and next time, they would come with everything they had. Inside the command center on Earth, Hale paced back and forth, his eyes never leaving the tactical screens. His face was hard, grim with determination. Despite the Empire's defeat, the war was far from over. The human fleet had struck a blow to the Empire's pride. But Hale knew that Corran, the Empire's commander, would never surrender so easily. The Empire had already shown its ability to adapt quickly, and Hale was certain they were planning their retaliation as they spoke. "Sir," Commander Torres called from across the room, breaking Hale's thoughts. "Our scouts report that the Empire is regrouping near the Nebula Fields. It looks like they're assembling a new fleet." Hale stopped pacing, his hand running through his hair. The Empire wasn't just regrouping. They were preparing for a final push. They had learned their lesson, but they hadn't given up. Earth's fleet was still strong, but not invincible. They couldn't afford to underestimate their enemies, not now. "Have the remaining ships prepare for immediate deployment," Hale ordered, his voice steady. "We're going to take the fight to them before they can organize. Earth won't wait for them to make the next move." Back in the Galactic Empire's war room aboard the Valiant Star, Admiral Corran stared at the screens showing Earth's fleet, now reformed and ready for battle. He had spent hours poring over data, learning from his mistakes. He'd seen firsthand the devastating power of Earth's ships. He couldn't afford to make another error in judgment. "We underestimated them," Corran muttered to himself, his hands clenching into fists. He was furious, not just with the defeat, but with the fact that Earth had managed to turn the tide. "But we won't make that mistake again. Prepare the fleet. This time, we finish what we started." His officers moved quickly, their faces determined. The Empire's forces, although damaged, were still formidable. Corran's mind raced as he reviewed his strategies. The human fleet had proven itself capable, but they hadn't yet faced the full might of the Empire. He would make sure they did. The human ships, gleaming with their newfound strength, powered up their weapons, preparing for the final battle. Earth's fleet was stronger than ever before, but so was the Empire's determination. Both sides were ready for the ultimate clash. The question was, who would come out victorious? General Hale stood in front of the command center's main console, watching as the screens updated with reports. He had never seen Earth's fleet so unified, so ready for war. Their ships were more than just tools of destruction now. They were symbols of resistance. And in his heart, Hale knew that they couldn't afford to lose. Not after everything they had fought for. Not after everything they had lost. The time for diplomacy had passed. There was no more room for negotiation. Earth's message had been clear. The Galactic Empire was no longer welcome in their galaxy. And if the Empire wanted to crush humanity, they would have to fight for it. "All ships, prepare for the final assault," Hale said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "We take the fight to them, and we don't stop until we've sent them back to the depths of space where they belong. We fight for Earth. We fight for humanity." The human fleet, now united under one purpose, roared into action. Engines flared, weapon systems hummed to life, and the ships surged forward, moving as one toward the heart of the Empire's retreating forces. The stakes had never been higher. This was it, the final showdown. It would decide the fate of both Earth and the Empire. Admiral Corran watched as the human fleet approached, His fingers hovered over the controls, his face hard with focus. He wasn't going to let Earth's ships push him around again. He would fight with everything he had. As the two fleets met in the cold emptiness of space, the first wave of lasers lit up the dark void. Explosions echoed in the silence as both sides traded blows, each desperate to gain the upper hand. The battle raged on, with the fate of entire galaxies hanging in the balance. For the humans, this wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that Earth had a place in the universe, a place that would not be taken, a place that would not bow down to any power, no matter how mighty. For the Galactic Empire, this was about revenge. They had underestimated Earth once. They wouldn't make the same mistake again. The battle intensified as the two forces clashed, the once distant stars now flickering with the energy of war. There was no turning back now. The shattering blow. The battle raged on in the cold, vast emptiness of space, the stars bearing witness to the fury unleashed by both the Galactic Empire and Earth's fleet. The silence of the cosmos was shattered by the sounds of war, the blasts of energy weapons, the shrieks of damaged ships, and the distant explosions that rocked the very fabric of space. Humanity's resolve was evident, but so was the might of the Empire. As the two fleets clashed, the outcome remained uncertain, the balance of power hanging by a thread. General Hale stood at the heart of the Earth's command center, his hands gripping the edge of a console, his gaze locked on the unfolding chaos. The human fleet had come a long way since their first confrontation with the Empire. They were stronger now, more unified, and their strategies more refined. But even as the Empire's warships faltered, Hale knew that victory was not guaranteed. "Commander Torres, what's the status on the front lines?" Hale demanded, his voice urgent, but calm. Torres, her face illuminated by the glow of the tactical displays, glanced at the readouts before answering. "We're holding strong, sir, but the Empire's forces are relentless. Their command ships are coordinating a full counterattack. It's not going to be long before they regroup and hit us harder." Hale clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of the situation settle on his shoulders. He had no intention of letting the Empire reclaim control of the battlefield. Earth's fleet had been through too much, endured too many losses to falter now. He had led them through battles where defeat had seemed inevitable. But this was different. The stakes were higher than ever before. He turned to his officers. "Prepare the second wave of fighters. We're hitting their command ships before they can launch another counteroffensive." At the same time, across the battlefield, Admiral Corrin stood on the bridge of the Valiant Star, his cold eyes scanning the displays. He could feel the intensity of the battle. His fleet was growing weaker with each passing moment, but his pride was a fierce thing. His resolve would not break. The loss of so many ships was only a temporary setback. The Empire had resources that would ensure humanity's defeat. "Admiral," one of his officers said, his voice tight with urgency, "we're losing momentum. The human fleet is more coordinated than we expected. Their countermeasures are highly effective." Corrin's fist slammed down on the console, his rage barely contained. "I will not let a handful of humans defy the might of the Galactic Empire," he roared. "Prepare the final strike. Activate the Death Wave cannons." The officers hesitated, knowing the consequences of such an action. The Death Wave cannons were a last resort weapon, a doomsday device capable of obliterating entire fleets in one shot. If they unleashed it, it would ensure Earth's fleet was wiped out, but it would also destroy everything in its path. Nothing would remain. "Are you certain, sir?" an officer asked, his voice trembling. Corrin's gaze hardened. "Do it. The Empire will not fall to these primitive humans." As the orders were given, a pulse of energy began to build in the heart of the Valiant Star. The Death Wave cannons were primed, their energy levels spiking to unprecedented levels. The hum of power filled the air, a foreboding sound that sent a chill down the spine of every officer on board. Corrin stood firm, his face set in determination. He had come too far to fail now. Back on Earth's fleet, General Hale watched with dread as the readings on his screen began to change. Something was wrong. The Empire's fleet was pulling back, but it wasn't retreating. It was gathering all its power, and Hale had seen this before in intelligence reports from the last war. The Empire was preparing for something big. "Everyone, brace yourselves," Hale shouted to his crew. "They're about to unleash everything they have. Get the fleet into position, now." Before he could finish his order, a burst of energy flared from the Empire's flagship. A terrifying, blinding beam shot through the void, expanding with terrifying speed. The sheer power of the blast seemed to ripple the very fabric of space, and Earth's ships, caught in its path, were torn apart in an instant. The battle was no longer a war between two fleets. It had escalated to something far worse. The Empire had just declared its final assault, and the consequences would be devastating. Hale's heart sank as he watched the human ships begin to disintegrate under the relentless assault. The fleet, which had fought so hard, was now in grave danger of being wiped out. Earth had never faced an enemy like this before. "Sir," Torrid shouted, her voice filled with panic, "our ships are being torn apart. The death wave is unstoppable. We need tow." "I know," Hale said, his voice barely a whisper. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. But even in the face of certain destruction, something inside him refused to give in. "We don't stop fighting. We never stop fighting." He turned to his tactical officer. "Activate the superweapon. It's time to show them the true power of Earth." The officer hesitated for a moment, his face pale. "Are you sure, sir?" "This weapon." "There is no other choice," Hale interrupted. "We end this here now." As the final weapon came online, the energy coursed through Earth's fleet. It was humanity's last hope, and General Hale knew they had one chance to survive. As the deathwave cannons continued their relentless assault on Earth's ships, Hale's eyes glinted with determination. The human race had been through too much, no matter the cost. They would fight until the last breath. The time for hesitation had passed. The time for survival had arrived. The first encounter. The night sky above Earth was still. The stars glittered like diamonds, peaceful and untouched by the chaos below. But in the silence of space, something was different. Something strange. Deep in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, a massive unknown ship appeared. It wasn't like anything humans had ever seen. It was dark, sleek, and enormous, like a shadow cutting through the stars. Its shape was not like any spacecraft built by Earth's best engineers. It was a terrifying sight, floating silently in space as if it had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At first, no one noticed. The people on Earth were focused on their daily lives, working, living, and caring for their families. But the calm was broken when a loud alert rang across the world's top military bases and space stations. Something was wrong. Something that couldn't be ignored. The global defense systems had detected an enormous object entering the solar system. It wasn't a comet or an asteroid. It wasn't a friendly spacecraft either. The object moved with purpose, heading straight for Earth. The news spread quickly. People began to panic. Governments tried to calm the world, but it was clear that something beyond their control was happening. The object moved closer to Earth, getting larger with every passing minute. Dr. Helena Rourke, the lead scientist at the Earth Space Research Center, stared at the data coming in. Her face was pale, eyes wide with disbelief. "This can't be real," she whispered to herself. She turned to her team, each one equally stunned by the images on the screen. "This is no ordinary ship. It's something far worse." On the ground, the military began mobilizing, sending fighter jets into the sky, preparing for the worst. They didn't know what they were dealing with, but they couldn't afford to take any chances. Satellites and radar systems tried to track the mysterious object, but it moved with incredible speed, bypassing every defense Earth had put in place. The object wasn't slowing down. It was heading straight for Earth. "What is it?" The question echoed through military channels. No one had an answer. No one could explain it. The ship's approach was steady, unhurried. It didn't rush to get to Earth, but its presence was undeniable. There was something unnatural about the way it moved. It wasn't like the ship's humanity was used to, built to withstand the harshness of space. This ship looked ancient, as if it had been drifting through space for ages, waiting for its moment. As the ship grew larger in Earth's orbit, all eyes were on it. The media broadcasts turned to the skies, capturing the shadow looming over the planet. People were afraid, unsure of what to think. Some thought it might be a new form of attack. Others believed it was a sign from another civilization. But whatever it was clear that Earth wasn't ready for it. Military forces from every corner of the world came together to form a defense strategy. Fighters and jets soared into the sky, trying to reach the object. But as they neared it, something strange happened. The ships froze. Not physically, but mentally. The pilots reported that their instruments stopped working. Their weapons wouldn't fire. And worst of all, the closer they got, the more they felt as if they were being pulled toward the ship, like it was drawing them in, unwilling to let them leave. General Marcus Gray, the head of the Earth Defense Forces, stood in front of his team, his eyes locked on the massive object on the monitor. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Why aren't our jets responding?" We don't know, sir," a technician replied, panic creeping into his voice. "It's like we're being jammed. Our communications, our navigation, everything is going haywire." Helena, still in her lab, was analyzing the data. She couldn't explain what was happening, but she knew one thing for sure. The ship wasn't just a threat. It was something far worse. The signals coming from it were unlike anything they had ever encountered before. There was a strange energy coming from the ship, one that seemed to block all human technology. "It's like it's alive," she muttered, her voice barely audible. "But it's not alive in any way we understand. It's controlling everything around it." And then, just when it seemed like Earth had no chance, a signal came through. It was faint, distorted, but it was clear enough to make out the message. "The hunt begins." Those 3 words were enough to send chills down the spines of every person who heard them. It wasn't a message of peace. It wasn't a request for help. It was a declaration. The world went silent. Everyone knew that this was only the beginning. The ship in space wasn't here to make friends. It wasn't here to negotiate. It was here for one thing: Earth. And in that moment, the people of Earth understood something terrifying. They weren't prepared for this. As the unknown ship moved closer, humanity realized they were facing something beyond their comprehension, an enemy unlike anything they had ever known. The hunt had begun. The hunt begins. The strange ship loomed closer to Earth. Its dark, metallic surface shimmered like the depths of space itself, and as it drew nearer, an eerie feeling swept over the planet. The scientists at the Earth Space Research Center continued to analyze the ship, but they were no closer to understanding it than when it first appeared. They had no answers, only more questions. General Marcus Gray paced back and forth in the command center, his mind racing. The entire Earth Defense Forces were on high alert, but nothing was working. The jets were useless, their weapons disabled, and their communication systems jammed. The strange energy emanating from the ship was overwhelming, leaving the world's most advanced technology useless. No one knew how to stop it. On the ground, panic began to spread. In every major city, people gathered in the streets, staring up at the sky, unsure of what to do. Governments made frantic announcements, promising to protect the people, but no one knew what to expect. What did they do when an entire galaxy seemed to stand against them? How could they fight an enemy they couldn't even see? Back at the Earth Space Research Center, Dr. Helena Rourke had been working nonstop, trying to find any clue about the ship's intentions. Her mind raced as she reviewed the data coming in. There was something about this ship, something that didn't make sense. The ship wasn't just technologically advanced. It was ancient. It felt as though it had been drifting through space for eons, waiting for this exact moment. Helena frowned, her thoughts racing. What could it want? She muttered to herself, "Why Earth?" She wasn't the only one asking that question. General Gray's team was also scrambling to find answers. The world had never seen anything like this before. The ship didn't come with a message or any attempt at communication. It just appeared, and now, it seemed to be drawing closer with each passing second. The strange, metallic ship continued its slow descent through the atmosphere. At first, it hovered above the planet, as if studying its surroundings. Its presence seemed to radiate a sense of malevolence, as if it was waiting for the right moment to strike. Then, without warning, it released something, small, dark, and sleek, shooting down toward Earth at breakneck speed. The world watched in horror as dozens of these ships shot toward the surface. They were like nothing humanity had ever encountered before. They were fast, agile, and made no sound as they sped toward the ground. They landed with deadly precision, targeting key locations around the world. The people who lived near the impact zones were the first to feel the terror. Buildings crumbled. The earth shook. The world seemed to tremble in fear as the small ships began to spread out, searching for their prey. Helena stared at the screen, her heart pounding. It's not just a ship. It's an invasion. It's hunting us. The general's voice crackled over the comms. Everyone on high alert. Mobilize every unit. We have to stop them. But it was too late. The ships on the ground began to move. They were fast, too fast for humanity to catch. They didn't look like anything the military had prepared for. There were no weapons, no visible signs of defense. They moved with a deadly purpose, targeting the most populated areas. Wherever they landed, they seemed to suck the life out of everything around them, as if feeding on something vital. The people of Earth watched in terror as they realized that these invaders weren't interested in conquering. They were hunting. General Gray watched helplessly as the chaos unfolded. "Get me a solution, now," he shouted, his voice filled with panic. But no solution came. The world's best technology had failed them. The enemy was too advanced, too powerful. The ships continued to spread across the planet, each one moving with precise, deadly accuracy. They seemed to be searching for something. People ran, tried to hide, but no one was safe. Back at the Earth Space Research Center, Dr. Rourke was still scrambling to find answers. She'd been working on the theory that the ships were somehow using the energy from Earth's own atmosphere to grow stronger, but she couldn't prove it yet. Every time she thought she had a breakthrough, the data changed, and the mystery deepened. Then, another message came through, this time louder and clearer than before. It wasn't directed at Earth, but to the ship in space. The voice was cold, metallic, and full of malice. "The hunt continues. Earth will fall. Prepare for the feast." The message sent a wave of terror through everyone who heard it. It was no longer a question of what the invaders wanted. It was clear now. Earth was their prey. And as the ships continued their deadly hunt, the people of Earth realized they were fighting an enemy beyond their understanding. An enemy that had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The hunt was far from over. The unseen enemy. The world was gripped in chaos. From the towering skyscrapers of New York to the ancient streets of Rome, people were running, hiding, and scrambling to make sense of the nightmare that had unfolded. The alien invaders, strange metallic creatures with terrifying speed and precision, were hunting them one by one, and no one knew how to stop them. The once peaceful world was now a battleground. General Marcus Gray stood at the helm of the Earth Defense Command, his face tight with anxiety. The military's greatest minds had gathered, but no one had an answer. The aliens had come out of nowhere, and their technology was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Every weapon they had was useless. Every plan they devised only led to more destruction. "Why are they doing this?" Marcus asked, his voice strained with frustration. "What do they want?" Dr. Helena Rourke, still at the Earth Space Research Center, was no closer to understanding the enemy. Her fingers flew over the holographic displays, the data streaming in from satellites and ground sensors. She could barely keep up with the analysis. "I don't know yet, General," she replied, her voice calm but edged with fear. "But I think they're feeding off something. Their ships, whatever they are, seem to be growing stronger with every minute that passes. The more destruction they cause, the more power they gain." Helena's mind raced. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper behind the attack. It wasn't just conquest. It was as if the invaders were part of a larger ancient hunger, a drive that reached beyond space and time. She glanced at the live feed of one of the alien ships that had landed in Africa. It had sent out several smaller craft, and the area around it was in complete disarray. Thousands of people had already been wiped out, and the land itself seemed to wither and die in the wake of the attack. "We have to stop them," General Gray said, slamming his fist on the table. "We have no idea what we're dealing with, but we can't just sit here and wait for them to finish their hunt." The military was being mobilized worldwide, but it was clear that every attack they launched had little to no effect. The invaders were everywhere. They didn't fight with traditional weapons. Instead, they consumed everything in their path. Energy, resources, life itself. Back in New York, soldiers barricaded buildings, trying to defend the citizens, but it was like fighting shadows. The alien craft were too fast, too intelligent, and they seemed to anticipate every move. It wasn't a battle. They were being picked off one by one. The world's leaders tried to stay calm, issuing orders to evacuate cities, organize resistance, and establish safe zones. But the sense of dread hung in the air, thick and suffocating. People were no longer listening to the broadcasts. They were running. They were trying to escape. In the midst of the panic, a lone human soldier named Sergeant Jack Sullivan stood his ground. He was a decorated veteran of many wars, but nothing he had faced before had prepared him for this. The alien horrors, with their eerie metal bodies and razor-sharp limbs, were closing in on his team. His orders were clear: evacuate the civilians, protect the city. But Jack couldn't leave, not when he knew what was coming. "We need to hold them back," Jack said, his voice grim as he looked out across the city. The streets were eerily quiet now, the last remnants of humanity retreating in all directions. No matter what. His comrades nodded, but they all knew the truth. The battle was already lost. And yet, Jack refused to give up. He would fight until the last breath. As he and his small team took their positions, Jack couldn't help but wonder why the invaders were so focused on Earth. What was it about this planet that made them come all the way from the dark corners of space? Were they hunting for something? Something unique to Earth? And then something in the distance caught his eye. A flash. A dark figure moving in the shadows. It was a massive creature, unlike any human had ever seen. It was more than just a machine. It was a living nightmare. Its eyes glowed with a cold, unnatural light, and its massive limbs moved with purpose, scouring the streets for any remaining survivors. The creature stopped in its tracks as it sensed Jack's presence. It turned its head slowly, its glowing eyes locking onto his. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He could feel its hunger. It was coming for him. But before it could strike, an explosion rang out. The ground shook, and Jack was thrown to the ground, his vision spinning. He struggled to regain his bearings, but when he looked up, the creature was gone. Confusion filled his mind. What had happened? Had someone come to his aid? Who could fight these things? And then, a voice crackled through his comms. It was Dr. Rourke, her voice calm but urgent. "General Gray, Sergeant Sullivan, we think we have an answer. The aliens aren't just here for resources. They are feeding on the very life force of Earth itself. The energy they consume is somehow linked to their hunger, and it makes them stronger with each passing moment." Jack swallowed hard, his mind racing. Was this the beginning of the end? Were they facing something that humanity couldn't fight? As the night stretched on, Jack knew one thing. Earth had no choice but to find a way to stop them before it was too late. The growing darkness. The world was changing, and not for the better. What had begun as a horrifying, almost unbelievable invasion was now a terrifying reality. Humanity, the dominant species on Earth for centuries, was no longer in control. The aliens had come, and they weren't just invaders. They were predators, and Earth was their prey. Across the globe, cities were falling. The once bustling streets of Paris were now eerily silent, deserted except for the occasional flicker of lights and the remnants of human life left behind in the wake of destruction. New York City, once a shining beacon of human achievement, now stood as a crumbling monument to humanity's inability to stop the invasion. Sergeant Jack Sullivan, however, remained determined to fight. His team, exhausted and battered from days of combat, had taken refuge in a small underground bunker near the heart of New York. Outside, the air was thick with the smell of smoke and the sounds of distant explosions. The ground shook beneath their feet as the aliens continued to ravage the city. "This isn't just about conquering us," Jack muttered to himself, looking out through a crack in the bunker wall. His voice was low, but his eyes burned with determination. "They're feeding on us. They're draining everything we've got. And they're not stopping." The data from Dr. Helena Rourke, now the leading scientist in the fight against the aliens, only confirmed Jack's suspicions. The aliens, it seemed, weren't just interested in the resources of Earth. They were consuming the very essence of the planet, taking in the energy, the life, and everything that made Earth unique. Their ships, strange and imposing, had begun to draw power from the atmosphere itself, amplifying their power with each passing hour. Helena's voice crackled through the comms. "Sergeant Sullivan, we've identified the core of their attack. They're using energy siphoning technology, something we've never seen before. The more destruction they cause, the stronger they get. We're going to have to find a way to disrupt their power source." But Jack wasn't sure if they had time. Every moment, the invaders grew stronger, more powerful. Their ships had taken out entire fleets, leaving nothing behind but smoldering ruins. Even Earth's most advanced weaponry had failed to make a dent in their seemingly invincible forces. "They're not just aliens," Jack said, shaking his head. "They're something else, a force of nature. And they're not just here for resources or power. They want to feed, to consume. They want to take everything Earth has to offer." His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden noise. A loud crash echoed through the bunker, followed by the unmistakable sound of heavy footfalls. Jack's team quickly scrambled into action, grabbing their weapons and taking positions. "Stay sharp," Jack ordered. "We don't know what's out there, but we can't afford to be caught off guard." The door to the bunker creaked open, and for a moment, everything was still. Then, without warning, the sound of a metal claw scraping across the concrete sent a chill down Jack's spine. He rushed to the door, peering through a small window. What he saw made his blood run cold. The sky above them had darkened further, and in the distance, he could see the unmistakable silhouette of one of the alien ships. But this time, it wasn't just hovering. It was moving toward them, its massive form blocking out the sky, casting a long shadow over the city. "We've got company," Jack said under his breath. He turned to his team. "Get ready." The aliens had arrived in full force. As the massive ship drew closer, Jack could see its immense power, its strange, glowing energy radiating outward, draining everything it touched. The buildings around it began to wither, their structures collapsing as the alien vessel sucked the very life from the land. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a harbinger of death. "We need to move," Jack said urgently. "We can't stay here. They'll tear this place apart." But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't just about surviving. It was about finding a way to stop them before they could destroy everything. As the alien ship came closer, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The energy from the ship crackled in the air, growing stronger with every passing second. "Helena, can you hear me?" Jack called into his comms. "Yes, Sergeant. We're still working on a plan to stop them, but you need to move. The aliens are adapting to our attacks faster than we can respond. If we don't act soon, they'll overwhelm us." Jack's mind raced. What could they do? How could they fight an enemy that seemed to be feeding off their very existence? What was their weakness? He turned back to the window, watching as the alien ship descended lower, casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the city whole. Its sleek, dark exterior reflected the dim light of the dying sun, and Jack realized something. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a race against time. If they didn't act now, they might not have a chance to stop the aliens. Earth might be lost forever. And then, out of the corner of his eye, Jack saw something that made his heart skip a beat. A light, a small, steady beacon in the distance, shining through the haze of smoke and destruction. It was a signal, a message from the Resistance. Maybe they weren't alone in this fight after all. "We have a chance," Jack whispered, his grip tightening around his weapon. "We can still fight. We have to." With renewed determination, Jack turned to his team. "We move out now. Let's give Earth a fighting chance." The last stand. The city was a shadow of its former self. What had once been a symbol of human resilience, bustling with life, now lay in ruins. The alien forces, relentless and hungry, had ravaged everything in their path. Earth's military was scattered, broken, and on the verge of collapse. The few survivors were scattered across the planet, with no way to coordinate an effective counterattack. The alien ships had drained the power from their cities, leaving them in a near-permanent state of darkness. Sergeant Jack Sullivan and his team had taken shelter in what remained of a government facility on the outskirts of New York. The facility's underground bunkers were holding up better than most places, but even here, they could feel the tremors of the alien ships above them. Each shockwave reverberated through the walls, reminding them that time was running out. "Is there any word from the Resistance?" Jack asked, his voice tight with frustration. Dr. Helena Work's face appeared on the screen in front of him, her expression grim. "I wish I had better news, Jack. The Resistance is scattered. Communications are down across most of the planet. We've lost contact with the Central Command. What we know for sure is that the aliens are closing in on every major city. They're draining everything. Our power, our resources, our very will to fight." Jack's fists clenched at his sides. He had seen the destruction firsthand. The devastation was unimaginable, and yet it felt like the worst was yet to come. Every attack from the alien forces seemed to make them stronger, more invincible. They weren't just invaders. They were parasites, feeding off the very essence of the planet. "We can't give up," Jack said firmly. "There has to be something we can do." Helena paused for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. Then her eyes lit up with a spark of hope. "There is one thing. It's a long shot, but it might work." Jack leaned forward, his attention fully on her. "What are you talking about?" "While we've been focusing on defending Earth, we missed one crucial detail. The alien ships, their technology, it's all linked. If we can find a way to disrupt the connection between their ships, it could cause a chain reaction. It might shut down their entire invasion." Jack's mind raced. Could it really be that simple? Disrupt their technology, and the entire alien force would collapse. It was hard to believe, especially after everything they had endured. But it was the only lead they had. "Do we have the resources to pull it off?" Jack asked, his voice laced with doubt. Helena nodded. "We might. There's an old military satellite facility nearby. It's not much, but if we can get there, we might be able to access the communication grid. We can try to send a signal strong enough to disrupt their systems, but you'll need to move fast. The aliens are already closing in on that area." Jack didn't hesitate. He turned to his team. "We're going in. Get ready. This is our last chance." The group quickly gathered their equipment, preparing for what could very well be a one-way mission. The stakes were higher than ever, and they all knew it. But there was no time to waste. Earth was counting on them. As they moved through the broken streets of New York, the atmosphere was thick with smoke and tension. The alien ships hovered overhead, their ominous presence casting long shadows across the city. Every step they took was a reminder of how much they had already lost. And yet, they pressed on. It didn't take long before they encountered the first wave of aliens. The metallic, monstrous figures emerged from the darkness, their eyes glowing with hunger. The air crackled with energy as the alien ships released devastating blasts, causing the ground to tremble beneath their feet. "Get down," Jack shouted, pulling his team behind cover as blasts from the alien ships struck the ground around them. The team quickly retaliated, firing their weapons in unison. The alien creatures were formidable, but Jack's team was experienced. They had fought through some of the fiercest battles Earth had ever seen. Even so, the odds were against them. "We can't let them stop us," Jack said, firing a shot at an advancing alien soldier. "We have to keep moving." The battle raged on as the team advanced, ducking and weaving through the rubble of the city. Every step they took brought them closer to the satellite facility, but also deeper into danger. The alien forces were relentless, their attacks never ceasing, and with each strike, their presence on Earth seemed to grow stronger. "We're almost there," Jack said, as the facility came into view. But it wasn't going to be easy. The area around the facility was heavily guarded, and it was clear that the aliens were aware of their presence. "Stay sharp," Jack warned. "We make it to that facility, or we die trying." As they neared the facility, the aliens launched a final, all-out assault. The skies above them lit up with fire as beams of energy sliced through the air. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't falter. They had come this far. They couldn't give up now. With a final push, the team made it to the entrance of the satellite facility. Jack kicked open the door, leading his team inside. But as they entered, the ground shook violently, and the sound of alien ships approaching grew louder. "This is it," Jack whispered, his eyes filled with determination. "We either succeed, or we end right here." As they worked to activate the facility's systems, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this was their final stand. The fate of Earth, and of humanity itself, was now in their hands. The next few minutes would decide everything. Could they truly disrupt the alien invasion, or would Earth fall, consumed by the titanium nightmares that had emerged from the darkness of the void, the last hope? The air in the satellite facility was thick with tension. The whirring of machines and the steady hum of power provided a faint backdrop to the urgent silence that enveloped Jack and his team. They had reached the control center, but time was running out. The alien ships were closing in, their weapons primed to obliterate anything in their path. "Jack, we're running out of time." Helena's voice crackled through the comms. "If we don't get that signal out soon, the aliens will have us surrounded. You need to make this work." Jack wiped the sweat from his brow, eyes scanning the flickering screens in front of him. The facility's control room had seen better days. Smoke and dust filled the air, and most of the equipment looked old and out of date. But it was their only shot at survival. They had to make it work. "Okay, team, let's get this up and running," Jack ordered, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. "Find the communication grid. We need a direct link to the alien network, and we need it now." The team scrambled to work, fingers flying over keys, checking systems, and rerouting power. Outside, the sound of alien ships grew louder, their engines like thunder in the distance. Every minute they wasted was one step closer to being wiped out. Jack glanced at his watch. They had maybe 15 minutes before the alien forces arrived in full force. The facility wasn't much of a stronghold, but it was all they had. If they didn't succeed, Earth's last hope would be gone. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the facility. The outer door had been breached. Alien soldiers, clad in their terrifying metal armor, poured through the hole in the wall. Their eyes glowed with the same hunger they had shown in every battle, and their weapons hummed with deadly intent. "Get to the control panels. Now," Jack yelled. The team quickly spread out, firing on the advancing aliens. Jack's heart raced as he joined the fight, exchanging shots with the invaders. The bullets from his rifle seemed to have little effect on their tough metallic hides, but he didn't stop. He had no choice but to keep fighting. The fate of Earth depended on it. Behind him, Helena shouted, "Jack, the link's almost there. I need a few more seconds." Seconds. That's all they had. Jack darted across the room, dodging incoming fire, his team covering him as he reached the central console. He slammed his hand down on the button to activate the main system. "I've got it." Helena's voice rang out, and Jack felt a spark of hope. "Now, we just need to send the signal." With a deep breath, Jack turned to the others. "We've done all we can. Now we pray it works." The alien soldiers were closing in, their weapons blazing. Jack's team was holding their ground, but it was clear they couldn't keep it up much longer. Their ammunition was running low, and the alien forces just kept coming. The facility was nearly surrounded. Jack knew that once the aliens broke through, there would be no more hope. "Helena, can you send the signal now?" Jack shouted, firing his rifle at a soldier charging toward him. "Almost. Just one more second," she called out. The room was filled with the sound of gunfire and explosions. The walls were shaking from the constant barrage, and the lights flickered dangerously. The aliens were relentless. But Jack's team refused to give up. Finally, the room grew quiet for a brief moment. Jack froze, his heart pounding as he turned toward Helena. "I sent the signal," she said, breathless. "Now, we wait." Jack's eyes widened as he turned to face the wall of monitors. For a moment, nothing happened. The alien soldiers outside were getting closer. He could hear their voices through the walls, growing louder, more menacing. The countdown to their destruction was ticking away. And then, as if the universe had listened to their plea, something incredible happened. On the monitors, the alien ship's systems began to flicker and glitch. A high-pitched whine echoed through the control room. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he saw the ship's lights dim and their weapons lose power. The alien forces had been hit by the signal. "Yes," Jack shouted, a surge of triumph flooding his chest. "We did it. We actually did it." But their victory was short-lived. The alien ships were still hovering overhead, and their forces were regrouping. The signal had weakened them, but it wasn't enough to end the invasion. "This isn't over," Jack said, his voice steady. "We've only just begun." The alien soldiers outside paused, their movements jerky as the glitching signal affected their systems. But even though the tide had shifted in humanity's favor, the battle was far from won. The alien invaders were far from defeated, and the war for Earth was still very much alive. Jack turned to his team, his eyes filled with resolve. "We've just bought ourselves some time. Now let's take this fight to them." Outside, the alien ships began to reorient themselves, preparing for another strike. Jack's team was outnumbered, outgunned, and running low on resources. But they weren't out of options. With the alien ships temporarily crippled, they had a chance. It was a slim one, but it was enough to reignite the spark of hope. As Jack's team made their way to the surface, they knew this was far from over. The titanium nightmares from the void were not just invaders. They were a scourge that would stop at nothing to consume Earth and all of humanity. But as long as Jack Sullivan and his team still breathed, they would keep fighting. And as long as the human spirit remained, Earth's hope would never die the final stand. The night was thick with tension as Jack's team made their way to the surface. The cool, dry air of the barren landscape felt different now, heavy with the weight of impending battle. They had bought themselves time, but it wouldn't last long. The titanium nightmares were reassembling their forces, and soon they would be back with a vengeance. Jack looked to his team, Helena, Lucas, Mark, and Sarah. They had come a long way together. Their faces were tired, but determination burned in their eyes. Earth's fate rested on their shoulders, and they knew that this was the final stand. The battle for survival had reached its last chapter. "Stay close," Jack ordered, his voice low but firm. "The aliens are regrouping. We hit them hard. Now we finish them off." Helena checked her weapon one last time, her fingers steady despite the tension. "We've got one shot at this. We have to take them down now. No holding back." The group advanced, moving swiftly but carefully through the alien ruins that surrounded the satellite facility. The barren planet seemed eerily quiet, the remnants of the previous battle still fresh in the air. Jack could feel his pulse quicken with each step. Ahead, the towering alien warships loomed, their hulking forms black against the starry sky. They had taken some damage from the signal, but they were still formidable. The aliens would be ready for them this time. Jack knew that. He gave the signal to halt as they approached the edge of a ravine. Below, the alien forces had gathered in force, their soldiers lined up in a seemingly endless wave. The titanium nightmares were no longer just machines. They were alive with hatred, ready to crush everything in their path. "They're too many," Mark whispered, his voice tight. "No," Jack responded, his jaw clenched. "We've got this. We've always had this." He turned to his team. "We hit them hard and fast. Take out the leader, and the rest will fall." They knew what to do. Each one of them had their roles. Helena with her tech expertise, Lucas with his sharp shooting, Sarah as the ground strategist, and Mark with his powerful, heavy weaponry. Jack would lead the charge, using his knowledge of the enemy's weaknesses to direct their every move. The plan was simple: disable the alien communications to prevent reinforcements from arriving. With their forces isolated, they would be able to strike decisively. Jack's team had never fought a battle this intense before, but they were ready. Earth was their home. They wouldn't give up. Suddenly, the ground shook. The aliens had detected their presence. "They know we're here," Lucas muttered, his hand gripping his rifle tighter. Jack raised his hand, signaling for silence. The moment they had been dreading had arrived. Without another word, they sprinted toward the alien encampment, weapons raised. The sky above them lit up as the alien warships fired on their position, sending bursts of energy down toward the ground. But Jack's team kept moving, undeterred by the explosions that rocked the earth around them. The first wave of alien soldiers charged at them, their eyes glowing menacingly as they raised their weapons. Jack's heart pounded as he fired at the approaching invaders, his shots finding their marks in the alien soldiers' vital spots. But there were too many of them, and they kept coming. It felt like an endless tide, one that would drown them if they didn't push forward. Helena's voice cut through the chaos. "The communication tower is just ahead. We can disable it from there." Jack nodded. They had no time to waste. They had to destroy the communication system and stop the reinforcements from coming. It was the only way to turn the tide of this battle in their favor. "Let's go," Jack shouted, charging ahead, leading the way to the tower. The rest of his team followed, guns blazing. They cut down the alien soldiers as they went, but more kept coming. The noise of battle filled the air, explosions, gunfire, and the cries of the wounded. As they neared the tower, Jack saw the leader of the alien forces, a massive, towering figure made of metal and organic material. Its eyes glowed with an eerie blue light, and it raised a weapon aimed directly at them. It was the key to ending this war. Without hesitation, Jack lunged forward, his rifle aimed at the alien leader. The team covered him as he charged, each step a defiance of the terror they had faced. The alien leader fired, but Jack was faster. He took a shot, hitting the leader's chest squarely. The alien stumbled, its grip on its weapon faltering. Jack didn't wait. He sprinted forward, closing the gap, and slammed into the leader with all his strength. The alien stumbled backward, momentarily off balance. Jack delivered a series of blows to the creature's vulnerable spots. Its eyes, joints, and underbelly. The alien leader roared in pain, its weapon falling to the ground. With a final strike, Jack drove his weapon through the alien leader's core. The creature's body convulsed as it fell, lifeless. "We've done it," Mark yelled from behind. Jack took a breath, his heart racing. But there was no time to rest. The communication tower was still active, and the remaining alien forces were regrouping. "Helena, now," Jack shouted. Helena rushed to the control panel, her fingers flying over the buttons. The tower began to malfunction, its systems glitching and sparking. One last push, and the communication grid was down. The alien reinforcements were cut off. With their leader defeated and their communications severed, the remaining alien forces faltered. The team took advantage of the momentary weakness, launching a final, decisive assault. The titanium nightmares were finally on the brink of defeat. As the last alien soldiers fell, Jack looked up at the sky. The battle was over. Earth had won. But as Jack Sullivan stood on that ravaged battlefield, breathing in the air of victory, he knew the fight for Earth's future was far from over. The titanium nightmares from the void had been beaten back, but more threats would come. The human spirit had survived, and it would rise again, no matter what challenges lay ahead. For as long as humanity fought, Earth's flame would never go out.